as the years went by and the wars came, the governments became bigger, the debt became bigger, Wall Street, City of London, and all other financial centers became bigger and bigger. More wealth was extracted from your great-grandparents, from your grandparents, from you right now, just to keep this casino going where they can basically charge you for your own debt slavery. Yes, you give them the power to enslave you with debt, and you pay them for that with interest on debt that is created or currency that is created out of thin air. Thursday, July 17th, 2025, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Well, we're going to look at the Federal Reserve today. There's a lot of talk that President Trump is putting the Federal Reserve's credibility and independence into question, that he wants to basically take over the Fed, and that the Fed needs this independence to keep a strong dollar, right? And keep the system going. Well, I'm going to recommend a few books today as well, and I'm going to tell you why, in my opinion, the best course of action is no Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve independence makes no difference. The system has been inflated to oblivion under the Federal Reserve System, and I'm going to prove that to you. Before I start, yes, we're back. We made a safe trip back home. Yesterday we arrived around 8 o'clock in the evening. You might be thinking or asking, where's Rudy? Well, I'm going to pick him up this afternoon around 1 o'clock. Yes, we miss him a lot, but I think he's had a really good time with the family that he spent 2 weeks with. Federal Reserve. As many of you who have followed me for, well, almost 10 years now, since I started creating content here, as many of as you know, I'm a very strong proponent of ending the Fed and central banks in general. I don't think central banks have any place whatsoever in a supposedly free market economy that we're supposed to have, not just in the US, but also in Western Europe. And why is that? Well, central banking is a monopoly. It's like a hybrid, and sometimes not even a hybrid. It's controlled by private interests. And I think the Federal Reserve is controlled by private interests, even though the Federal Reserve Board in Washington, D.C. is a government agency. I think the 12 regional banks, they have a lot of the power, especially the New York Fed, and they're all privately owned by their member banks, which are private institutions and have been since the inception of the Federal Reserve through the Federal Reserve Act in December of 1913. You look at the Bank for International Settlements, which is the bank for the central banks. Well, that was also created in 1930, and all the funding for that bank came from private central banks in Europe and private banks in the US, like JP Morgan, First National City Bank of New York, First National City Bank of Chicago. I've gone through this many times. I'm going to put a link to my BIS playlist up here, and you can look at it. I've got the documents, the statute of the BIS. So now there's a lot of talk. Today the FT is reporting, and this was just published a few hours ago. Donald Trump's escalating attack on Federal Reserve unnerve investors. U.S. President's offensive against Jay Powell has prompted swings in the dollar and lifted long-term inflation expectations. Of course, the mainstream economic, financial world, the press, the economists, the PhD economists, they don't have a clue, in my opinion, of what inflation really is. That inflation is really the ease with which, under the current system, the banking system can create credit and currency out of thin air. That's what creates the rising prices, because every time there's a problem with the banks and the stock market and the bond market, which is where these institutions really suck the wealth from the public. Every time there's a problem, they create more currency and debt out of thin air. And the institution that allows that to happen is the central bank, because it is the lender of last resort. So where does it get its power? Well, it gets its power from legislation. It's legal. The government makes it legal. But also it gets its power from you. And what do I mean by that? Well, prior to the Federal Reserve being created, the existence of the inland revenue, the tax authorities, was not there. So that's how they do it. They back all this debt and currency on your back through taxation, through the debasement of the currency that you're forced to use through legal tender laws. And the Federal Reserve, since its inception, has destroyed the purchasing power of a dollar. Your great grandparents, they could do a lot more with a dollar than you can do now. If the Federal Reserve was really an inflation fighter and kept the currency whole, this wouldn't have happened. So what is the solution? The solution is no Federal Reserve, no central bank, and the Constitution provides for that. They tell you what money is, that it has to be gold and silver, that it has to be coined. And even if there wasn't a constitution, most people in the free market would use gold and silver as money and other things. But I think gold and silver have, well, I don't want to sound like Ben Bernanke, but it's tradition that we use those things as money. They have been for thousands of years. So now so what I'm trying to say here before I go to the books is that all this talk of, and I'm not defending anyone here, nor the Fed, nor Trump. I'm just looking at the bigger picture and why you shouldn't be distracted by the fact that Trump might be infringing on the Fed's independence, because the Fed doesn't really care too much about the currency. It cares about Wall Street and the bankers that they are part of. It's a club. So I'm going to recommend first this book here, Our Crowd, which was recommended by Jim Sinclair, who was part of a banking family, the Seligmans. He used another surname, Jim Sinclair. He was Mr. Gold, and I learned a lot from him. He passed away, I think, 2 years ago. He had a really good blog called JS Mindset, and he told us we needed to read this. And it's by Stephen Birmingham, Our Crowd, The Great Jewish Families of New York. Am I being like racist or anti-Semitic? No, these are just facts. That's the other thing I wanted to say. I don't judge anyone in terms of religion. I judge people by their character. I don't care if they're Jewish, Muslim, or Christian, or Buddhists. But anyway, let's go through. I've read this a few times, this book. I'm sure you could probably find it easily on Amazon. It might be out of print, but you might find used ones. And I found this passage here the second time I read it, and I had like a eureka moment, because it's the kind of statement or passage that basically unintentionally tells us what the Federal Reserve is all about. So it's on page 40, and it says, in the Panic of 1837, Belmont was able to perform a service which he would repeat in subsequent panics, and which helped make him a friend to bankers and to the United States government by negotiating large loans from the Rothschilds. He was able to shore up the United States debtor banks. In other words, he was able, thanks to the hugeness of the Rothschild reservoir of capital, to start out in America operating his own Federal Reserve System. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the Rothschilds were the ones who bailed out the U.S. government and the system in 1837. And they kept doing that up until 1907. Yes, we're told that it was J.P. Morgan that bailed out the system in 07. He organized the bailout. Yes, and if you want to look into that as well, it's not the Federal Reserve, but it's the House of Morgan. If you look into that, Ron Chernow, great book, it shows you how really the Morgan banking interest, they started out in London. So that's why I'm telling you that it was not just the Morgans that bailed out Wall Street from in the subsequent years, right? So what happened is that the bankers got fed up, not fed up, but they thought this is dangerous. The U.S. is getting bigger. There's more speculation. We need a central bank like they had in England, so that we'll get the public to bail out Wall Street indirectly, right? And that was what happened after 1907, and that's why you need to read The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin as well, which tells you who were the culprits, the major banking families of Europe and the U.S. that organized the Federal Reserve, because I think the system came under a lot of pressure, Wall Street and the major London, New York banks in 1907. So they had to get a central bank. It would privatize their profits and socialize their losses. It would be much simpler. And there's some other books. I mean, the granddaddy of looking into the Federal Reserve really was Eustace Mullins. I think G. Edward Griffin got a lot of his material from him, and it's The Secrets of the Federal Reserve. Eustace Mullins was a protege of Ezra Pound. Interesting character. And then, of course, modern day, I would say this is a really good book, and The Fed by Ron Paul. So I'd look into those books that I told you. I'm going to put also a book recommendation playlist that I have here. There's many other books I've recommended. But what I want to talk about now is what central banks' purpose, the central bank's purpose really is. And I know it was the Central Bank of Sweden, which was the first European central bank, but I'll use the Bank of England as an example, founded in 1694. So the purpose of the central bank is to make sure that the state, the monarch, or whatever, can enter into wars and like finance projects and not have to worry about the debt. The debt is pushed onto the public via the national debt through taxation. And the other very important power the central bank has, unlike us, plebs or commoners is that they can create credit and currency out of thin air. Yes, the Bank of England supposedly backed the currency with gold, but not really. There's a lot of like opaque and like deception going on there. And the same thing happened with the Federal Reserve. Yes, they had a lot of gold in the beginning. The Fed's balance sheet was mostly gold and also discount bills to help like businesses. But as the years went by and the wars came, the governments became bigger, the debt became bigger, Wall Street, City of London, and all other financial centers became bigger and bigger. More wealth was extracted from your great-grandparents, from your grandparents, from you right now, just to keep this casino going where they can basically charge you for your own debt slavery. Yes, you give them the power to enslave you with debt, and you pay them for that with interest on debt that is created or currency that is created out of thin air. So just to give you an example, I was looking here at the U.S. Treasury historical data. I'm gonna put a link to it below in the description, and you can go through all the numbers. It goes back to, I think, 1790. But in 1866, after the end of the Civil War, the national debt was 2.77 billion. In 1913, no central bank, the debt was 2.916 billion. So a tiny increase in the debt. And of course, the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. By 1919, that debt almost went up tenfold. That's in 6 years, while in the prior, like from 66 to 1913, which is like almost 50 years, the debt went up a minuscule amount. So why did the debt go up so much like that? 10 times it went up to 27.39 billion. Well, because of World War I. And I think that was one of the reasons the bankers created the Federal Reserve, because they knew they were going to start a war, a major war. All wars are bankers' wars. And yes, they paid off some of that debt by the 30s, but then, of course, we got World War II, and then everything took off. And we're now, of course, I think at 37.1 trillion. And yes, we've got a merchandise store now, thanks to Karen from Florida. She created the Rudy collection, and recently she designed some and the Fed mugs. And I asked her to put some comments from Thomas Jefferson and Charles Lindbergh Sr. About banking and the Federal Reserve. And yes, you can get a mug and maybe even give one of the mugs to your friends, and they can learn about banking and the Federal Reserve and how a nefarious institution it is, right? And it's got Rudy on it. So the other thing I wanted to say about the Rudy collection is that up until the end of this month, if you buy something there, you will be entered in a draw, and if you win, you get a silver coin worth up to 50 bucks. So yeah, Federal Reserve. So do I think Trump knows all about central banking, that he wants to be the new Andrew Jackson and actually slay the central bank? I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced because one of the people that has been touted as the next Fed chairman or chairwoman in this case is Judy Shelton. Very nice lady. She's written an interesting book about gold and backing treasury bonds with gold. I don't think it's going to help that much. It's my opinion, but She has her opinions. And yeah, she's been touted as becoming one of the possible candidates to replace Jay Powell. And she was nominated to join the board of the Fed when Trump was president the first time, and the Senate rejected her. And when I interviewed her on this channel, she's not against the Fed. She's not against central banking. So that's why I don't think Trump is against central banking. I don't think he's going to push for the abolition of the Fed. The people that would do that would be people like Senator Rand Paul and Congressman Thomas Massie. And you know what Trump thinks of them now. So I'm not too hopeful. The only hope I have is that this whole debt bubble that central banks create, this whole edifice of endless debt and inflation collapses, and then people will wake up. And it's one of the reasons I make my videos, and I have this channel, is to inform the public about central banking and that it's not a good institution. And the reason why I cover the Fed so much, even though I'm in the UK, is because if the Fed goes, I think every other central bank will go. Of course, here in England or in the UK, the Bank of England is like an institution that has been around for so long, but one never knows. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss has come out and said that the Bank of England really, they're in charge, the bankers. They basically sabotaged her budget back in 2022 by disrupting the financial markets. Yeah, that's what they do. They've got control of the money. That's what one of the Lord Rothschilds, I think it was Meyer Amschel, in the 19th century said, "Give me control of a country's money and I care not who makes the laws." So if the politicians get too radical for them, well, they run the system. They can, they can blackmail the politicians by bringing the system almost to a breakdown. Ideally, we want to have the breakdown occur organically and expose these people. So the more you share my video, hopefully the more people will know about this. So there you go. How about the markets this morning? Well, it's 8 a.m. London. We've got gold at 3,334. Silver is pretty much unchanged at 37.87, so just below 38. Yeah, you need to hold on to your physical gold and silver for dear life, as I've said. This is not going to stop. They're going to keep inflating. And Trump, actually, he wants to cut rates by 3% in one go. So, yeah, independence or no independence, inflation is going to continue. That's the purpose of central banks, to inflate the system, to keep the bankers going, to keep the wars going, the governments going. But they just need to make sure that people don't twig onto it. So the problem they have with Trump is that Trump is too much, he wants too much of it, and it could expose their racket. That's the way I see it. So anyway, with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.